Lisa had always been the type of person who found peace in nature. After spending long days in the laboratory studying ocean life, she loved nothing more than putting on her running shoes and heading to the quiet trails that wound through Pine Ridge Forest. The 28-year-old scientist lived alone in a small apartment near the coast, and these evening runs were her way of washing away the stress of another challenging day at work. On this particular Tuesday evening, everything seemed normal when she locked her apartment door and drove the 15 minutes to her favorite trailhead. The weather forecast had called for clear skies, so she wore just her usual lightweight running gear, a thin tank top, shorts, and her well-worn sneakers. She grabbed a small water bottle and her keys, thinking this would be just another peaceful 3-mile loop through the forest. The trail she chose was one she had run dozens of times before. It started near the main parking area but quickly branched off into more remote sections of the forest. Most people stuck to the easier paths closer to the visitor center, which meant Lisa could usually count on having the deeper trails all to herself. That's exactly how she liked it. Just her thoughts, the sound of her feet on the dirt path, the quiet rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. About 20 minutes into her run, Lisa noticed the first signs that something was changing. Air felt different somehow, heavier and more humid than it had been when she started. She looked up through the canopy of trees and saw clouds gathering in the distance, much darker than what she remembered seeing in the weather report that morning. But she wasn't too worried yet. She had been caught in light rain during runs before, and it had never been more than a minor inconvenience. She decided to continue on her usual route, figuring she could always turn back if the weather got worse. The trail wound deeper into the forest, taking her past familiar landmarks, a fallen log that she always stepped over, a small creek that babbled quietly as it flowed downhill, and a clearing where she sometimes stopped to catch her breath and enjoy the view. But as she ran further from the parking area, the sky grew darker much faster than she had expected. What had started as distant clouds quickly became an ominous blanket of gray that seemed to swallow up the remaining daylight. The temperature began to drop noticeably, and Lisa felt the first cold drops of rain hitting her shoulders. Within minutes, those few drops turned into a steady drizzle, then into something much more serious. The rain came down harder and harder, soaking through her thin shirt almost immediately. The temperature seemed to plummet with each passing. Minute, and what had been a comfortable evening for running suddenly became uncomfortably cold. Lisa realized she had made a mistake. She was now almost 2 miles from her car, following a trail that would take her even further away before it eventually looped back toward the parking area. The smart thing to do would have been to turn around immediately and head back the way she came. But the rain was falling so hard now that she could barely see the trail in front of her. She tried to pick up her pace, hoping to get back to her car before the weather got any worse, but the trail had become slippery and treacherous. Her sneakers, which were perfect for running on dry dirt paths, had almost no grip on the wet rocks and muddy sections she now found herself navigating. As the rain continued to intensify, Lisa began to shiver. Her lightweight running clothes, which had seemed perfect for the warm evening she had expected, were now completely soaked and providing no protection at all against the cold. She wrapped her arms around herself as she continued along the trail, but it did little to help. The smart part of her brain, the scientist who was trained to analyze situations logically, told her that she needed to find shelter immediately. She was showing early signs of getting too cold and being alone in the forest with wet clothes, and dropping temperatures was not a situation to take lightly. Looking around desperately for any kind of protection from the storm, Lisa spotted what looked like a rocky overhang about 50 yards off the main trail. It wasn't much, but it would be better than staying out in the open. She carefully made her way through the wet undergrowth, slipping twice on hidden roots, but managing to keep her balance. When she reached the rocks, she discovered that what she had seen from the trail was actually the entrance to a small cave. It wasn't very large, but it was definitely deep enough for her to get completely out of the rain. She ducked inside gratefully, finally able to stop the constant assault of cold water on her already chilled skin. The relief of being dry was immediate, but Lisa quickly realized that her problems were far from over. Her clothes were thoroughly soaked, and the temperature inside the cave wasn't much warmer than it had been outside. She was still shivering, And she knew from her scientific training that this was her body's way of trying to generate heat. When it sensed that her core temperature was dropping, she tried wringing out her shirt and shorts, but there wasn't much point. Even if she could get some of the water out, the fabric would still be damp and cold against her skin. She considered taking off the wet clothes entirely, but the thought of being completely exposed in a strange cave seemed even worse than staying in the soggy garments. As she stood there trying to figure out what to do next, Lisa noticed something odd about the cave. There seemed to be a faint light coming from somewhere deeper inside. At first, she thought her eyes might be playing tricks on her in the dim light, but as she looked more carefully, she was certain she could see a soft, blue-green glow emanating from further back in the cave. Her scientific curiosity began to compete with her practical concerns about staying warm and safe. The logical part of her mind told her to stay put near the entrance, where she could see the trail outside and where any potential rescuers might find her. But another part of her, the part that had driven her to become a researcher in the first place, was intensely curious about what could be creating that strange light. She knew that some types of minerals could create natural phosphorescence, and there were certain types of fungi that glowed in dark environments. But the color and intensity of this light seemed different from anything she had studied before. It had an almost rhythmic quality to it, pulsing gently like a slow heartbeat. Against her better judgment, Lisa found herself moving deeper into the cave toward the source of the mysterious glow. She used her phone's flashlight to illuminate the rocky floor in front of her, careful not to trip or lose her footing on the uneven surface. As she rounded a bend in the cave passage, the blue-green light became much brighter, and Lisa stopped in her tracks. What she saw in front of her was something that her scientific mind simply could not process or explain. The light wasn't coming from rocks or fungi, or any natural source she could identify. It was coming from a figure standing in what appeared to be a larger chamber of the cave. A figure that was definitely not human, but was looking directly at her with what seemed like curiosity rather than hostility. And in that moment, soaking wet and shivering in a cave in the middle of nowhere, Lisa realized that her evening run had just become something she would never be able to explain to anyone. Lisa stood frozen at the entrance to the cave chamber, her mind struggling to make sense of what she was seeing. The figure before her was tall and graceful, standing about 6 feet in height with long, slender limbs that moved with an almost fluid quality. The most striking thing about her appearance was her skin, which seemed to glow with that same blue-green light Lisa had noticed from deeper in the cave. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but rather a soft, warm radiance that pulsed. Gently like the rhythm of a calm ocean, the being's face was humanoid in structure, but clearly not human. Her features were more refined and angular than any person Lisa had ever seen, with large eyes that seemed to hold depths of intelligence and what looked remarkably like kindness. She was wearing what appeared to be a form-fitting garment made of some material Lisa couldn't identify, something that seemed to shimmer and change color slightly as she moved. Lisa's first instinct was to run. Every survival instinct she had was screaming at her to turn around and flee back toward the cave entrance, storm or no storm. But something kept her feet planted firmly on the rocky floor. Maybe it was the scientist in her, the part that had always been drawn to discovering new things. Or maybe it was something about the way the being was looking at her, not with hostility or aggression, but with what seemed like gentle curiosity. The stranger raised one hand slowly, palm facing outward in what Lisa recognized as a universal gesture of peace. Then something extraordinary happened. Without moving her lips or making any sound that Lisa could hear, words began to form in Lisa's mind. Not her own thoughts, but clearly someone else's voice speaking directly into her consciousness. "Please do not be afraid," the voice said, calm and reassuring. "I mean you no harm. My name is Zara, and I have been waiting for the storm to pass, just as you are." Lisa's knees nearly gave out beneath her. She gripped the cave wall for support, trying to process what was happening. She had read about telepathy in science fiction books and seen it in movies, but experiencing it firsthand was unlike anything she could have imagined. The voice in her head was distinctly feminine, with a musical quality that was both foreign and strangely comforting. "How are you doing this?" Lisa managed to whisper out loud, her voice echoing slightly in the chamber. "My people communicate through what you might call thought sharing," Zara explained, and Lisa could somehow sense a smile in the mental voice, even though the being's facial expression remained neutral. It is more efficient than the sound-based communication your species uses, and it allows for a deeper understanding between individuals. Lisa's scientific mind began to engage, pushing past the initial shock. Your species? You're not from Earth? That is correct. What you would call a visitor to your world. My team and I have been studying your planet's atmospheric and ecological systems. We are particularly interested in the changes that have been occurring in your climate patterns over recent decades. The mention of climate research sparked something familiar in Lisa's brain. This was territory she understood, something she could relate to even in this impossible situation. You're studying our climate. I'm a marine biologist. I study ocean ecosystems and how they're being affected by temperature changes and acidification. There was a pause, and Lisa could sense something like surprise and pleasure in Zara's mental response. How remarkable. It appears that chance has brought together two individuals with similar interests, despite the vast differences in our origins. As they continued their strange conversation, Lisa became more comfortable with the telepathic communication. It was actually easier than speaking out loud, she realized. There was no need to worry about finding the right words or being misunderstood. The thoughts seemed to flow directly from one mind to the other with perfect clarity, Zara explained. That she was part of a small team that had been monitoring Earth's weather systems for several months. They had been tracking the storm that was currently raging outside, studying its intensity and movement patterns. Her equipment had detected Lisa's presence when she entered the forest, and Zara had been concerned about her safety when the weather turned dangerous so quickly. Your body temperature has dropped significantly, Zara observed, and Lisa realized that she was still shivering despite the protection from the rain. The clothing you wear is not sufficient for these conditions, and your skin temperature indicates that you may be approaching a dangerous level of heat loss. Lisa looked down at her soaked running clothes and had to admit that Zara was right. She was colder than she had ever been in her life, and the shivering was getting worse rather than better. Her fingers were starting to feel numb, and she could tell that her thinking was becoming less clear, both signs that her body was struggling to maintain its core temperature. I don't know what to do, Lisa admitted. I'm too far from my car to make it back in this storm, and I don't have any way to get warm. My species has evolved differently than yours, Zara explained gently. We do not require external coverings. To regulate our body temperature, skin cells can generate and distribute heat as needed, which is why you see the light emanating from my body. It is actually a byproduct of the thermal regulation process. Lisa found this fascinating from a biological standpoint, but she wasn't sure how it helped her current situation. She was still cold, still wet, and still trapped in a cave with no way to warm up. I may be able to assist you, Zara continued, and Lisa could sense some hesitation in the mental voice. My people have the ability to share our thermal regulation with other living beings when necessary. It is not something we do often, as it requires close physical proximity and a level of trust between individuals. What do you mean by close physical proximity? Lisa asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. My biothermal cells work most effectively through direct contact. I would need to share my body heat with you in the same way that members of your species might warm someone who has been exposed to cold water or extreme weather. Lisa felt her face flush despite the cold. The situation was already surreal enough without adding this complication. But as another wave of violent shivering ran through her body, she realized that her options were limited. She could stay as she was and risk serious hypothermia, or she could trust this strange being who claimed she wanted to help. You're saying you could keep me warm? Lisa said, wanting to make sure she understood correctly. Yes, my people consider it a basic act of compassion to provide thermal assistance to any being in distress.
Ow!
We would do the same for any creature we encountered in similar circumstances. There is nothing inappropriate about it by our cultural standards. It is simply one living being helping another to survive. Lisa could sense the sincerity in Zara's mental voice, and something about the way she explained it made the offer seem less strange and more like exactly what it was, a practical solution to a dangerous problem. As the cold continued to seep deeper into her bones, Lisa realized that her pride and embarrassment were luxuries she couldn't afford in this situation. Lisa's teeth were chattering so hard now that she could barely think straight. The cold had moved beyond just being uncomfortable and was becoming genuinely frightening. Knew enough about hypothermia from her scientific training to recognize that she was moving into dangerous territory. Her hands were so numb that she could barely feel her fingers. The shivering was taking so much energy that she felt exhausted. Looking at Zara, who stood calmly in the cave chamber with that gentle blue-green glow emanating from her skin, Lisa made a decision that surprised even herself. "Okay," she said quietly. "I trust you. I don't really have much choice at this point." Zara's expression softened, and Lisa could sense relief and compassion flowing through their mental connection. "I understand that this is difficult for you. Your species has many cultural complexities around physical contact that mine does not share. I will do everything possible to make this comfortable and respectful." "What exactly do I need to do?" Lisa asked, wrapping her arms around herself as another wave of violent shivering ran through her body. "First, we need to move to a more suitable location," Zara explained. Gesturing toward what Lisa now noticed was a passage leading even deeper into the cave system. "The chamber where I have been staying has better protection from the cold air currents, and I have some equipment there that will help." Lisa followed Zara through the passage, her wet sneakers squelching with each step on the smooth stone floor. The blue-green light from Zara's skin provided enough illumination to see where they were going, and Lisa was amazed at how the narrow tunnel opened up into a much larger space. The chamber they entered took Lisa's breath away. It was enormous, with a high ceiling that disappeared into shadows above them. But what really caught her attention were the walls themselves. They seemed to be covered with some kind of organic material that pulsed gently with the same warm light that came from Zara's skin. It was like being inside a living organism, except instead of feeling creepy or threatening, it felt incredibly peaceful and safe. "This is remarkable," Lisa whispered, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding her discomfort. "What is this place?" "My people create temporary shelters using bioluminescent organisms that can regulate temperature and humidity," Zara explained. "They are perfectly harmless and actually beneficial to the local ecosystem. When we leave, they will naturally decompose and become part of the soil." Lisa could feel warmth radiating from the walls, and for the first time since the storm had started, she stopped shivering quite so violently. But she was still dangerously cold, and they both knew it. In the center of the chamber was what looked like a platform made of the same organic material as the walls. It was roughly the size of a large bed, and it glowed more brightly than the surrounding surfaces, clearly generating more heat as well. "The thermal regulation platform," Zara explained. "It responds to body temperature and can amplify the heat-sharing process. We will need to remove your wet clothing first, as the dampness will prevent the biothermal transfer from working effectively." Lisa hesitated, but she could feel her thinking becoming more sluggish as the cold continued to affect her. She knew that modesty was a luxury she couldn't afford when her life might be in danger. "Could you turn around?" she asked. "Of course," Zara replied, and Lisa could sense amusement in the mental voice. "Though I should mention that my people do not have the same concept of body shame that yours does. To us, physical forms are simply biological vessels, no more significant than the clothing you wear." Lisa quickly peeled off her soaked shirt and shorts, leaving them in a pile on the floor. The air in the chamber was much warmer than outside, but she was still incredibly cold. She wrapped her arms around herself and approached the glowing platform. "The surface will feel warm but not hot," Zara said, still facing away. "You can lie down safely." The platform felt wonderful against Lisa's chilled skin. It was like lying on a giant heating pad, except the warmth seemed to penetrate much deeper than any human-made device could manage. She could feel her muscles beginning to relax for the first time in hours. "I'm ready," Lisa said, pulling her knees up to her chest and closing her eyes. She felt the platform dip slightly as Zara joined her. Through their mental connection, she could sense Zara's careful attention to Lisa's comfort and boundaries. The alien woman positioned herself close enough for the biothermal sharing to work, but not so close as to make Lisa feel crowded or uncomfortable. "This may feel strange at first," Zara warned gently. "My skin temperature is naturally much higher than yours, and you will feel the thermal cells activating. The first sensation was simply warmth, spreading across Lisa's back where Zara's hand made contact. Then something extraordinary happened. The warmth seemed to multiply and spread throughout her entire body as if every cell was suddenly remembering how to generate heat properly. It wasn't just external warming, it felt like the cold was being driven out from the inside. How is this possible? Lisa asked in wonder, feeling truly warm for the first time since the storm had started. My skin contains specialized cells that can detect temperature imbalances in nearby organisms, Zara explained. When they sense that another being is too cold, they automatically increase their thermal output and can even transfer some of their regulatory function temporarily. Lisa could feel the numbness leaving her fingers and toes as proper circulation returned. The violent shivering that had exhausted her was completely gone, replaced by a deep, comfortable warmth that seemed to reach every part of her body. It's incredible, Lisa said softly. It feels like being wrapped in sunshine. I am glad it is helping, Zara replied, and Lisa could sense the smile in her mental voice. Your body temperature is returning to normal levels. The danger is past. As the immediate crisis of hypothermia faded, Lisa became more aware of just how extraordinary her situation was. She was lying in an alien shelter, being warmed by technology that seemed like magic, having a telepathic conversation with a being from another world. It didn't feel frightening anymore. Zara's presence was so genuinely kind and peaceful that Lisa felt safer than she had in her own apartment. Thank you, Lisa said simply. You saved my life tonight. Any decent being would have done the same, Zara replied. Compassion should not be limited by the boundaries between species. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the warm, glowing chamber, Lisa felt completely protected. For the first time since stumbling into the cave, she allowed herself to truly relax. Whatever else happened tonight, she knew she was going to survive. And it was all thanks to the kindness of someone from among the stars. As the hours passed and the storm continued to howl outside the cave, Lisa found herself more comfortable than she had imagined possible. The biothermal platform maintained the perfect temperature, and Zara's presence had become surprisingly reassuring. What had started as a desperate situation had turned into something Lisa never could have dreamed of. A peaceful conversation with a being from another world? Lisa said, through their mental connection, staring up at the softly glowing ceiling of the chamber. How long have you been watching Earth? My people have been observing your planet for approximately 50% of your years, Zara replied. We became interested when our long-range sensors detected rapid changes in your atmospheric composition. Such dramatic shifts usually indicate either natural catastrophe or the presence of an intelligent species that is significantly altering their environment. Lisa felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. And which one did you conclude we were? Both, unfortunately. Zara's mental voice carried a tone of sadness. Your species has achieved remarkable technological advancement in an incredibly short time. But this progress has come at a cost that your planet may not be able to sustain. Conversation was hitting close to home for Lisa. Her own research had shown her the devastating effects that climate change was having on ocean ecosystems. She had spent countless hours studying coral reefs that were dying, tracking fish populations that were moving toward the poles as water temperatures rose, and measuring the increasing acidity levels that were making it difficult for shell-forming creatures to survive. We're trying to fix it, Lisa said defensively. There are scientists all over the world working on solutions. We're developing renewable energy, studying carbon capture, trying to reduce emissions. I know, Zara replied, gently, and your efforts are admirable. But our observations suggest that the changes may be happening faster than your solutions can be implemented. That is why some of us have been sent to study your planet more closely. Zara shifted slightly on the platform, and suddenly the air above them began to shimmer. Lisa gasped as what appeared to be a three-dimensional image materialized in the space above their heads. It was Earth, rotating slowly, but not the beautiful blue marble that Lisa was used to seeing in photographs. This version showed the planet in a spectrum of colors that revealed temperature patterns, atmospheric composition, and ocean currents. This is how we see your world, Zara explained. The red areas show regions where surface temperatures have increased beyond what your ecosystems can easily adapt to. The dark patches in your oceans indicate areas where the chemistry has changed enough to threaten marine life. Lisa stared at the holographic display with growing horror. The red zones covered far more of the planet than she had realized, and the dark patches in the oceans were spreading across areas she knew should be teeming with life. It was like seeing an X-ray of a patient and discovering that the illness was much worse than anyone had imagined. It's happening so much faster than we thought, Lisa whispered, unable to look away from the devastating image floating above them. Your species tends to think in terms of individual lifetimes, Zara observed. But planetary changes operate on different timescales. What seems gradual to you is actually quite rapid from a geological perspective. The display shifted, showing the same view of Earth, but from 50 years earlier. The difference was shocking. The planet that Lisa was looking at now bore little resemblance to the world that Zara's people had first observed. The changes that had taken place in just half a century were enormous. But there's still hope, isn't there? Lisa asked desperately. Your people must have seen other planets go through similar changes. Some of them must have found ways to recover. Some have, Zara confirmed, and Lisa felt a flood of relief, though it requires a level of cooperation and sacrifice that not all species are capable of achieving. Your people would need to work together in ways they have never done before. The holographic display changed again, this time showing what appeared to be other planets. Some were lush and green, with clear blue oceans and white clouds swirling through healthy atmospheres. Others were brown and lifeless, with thick, toxic atmospheres that blocked out their suns. These are worlds we have studied over many centuries, Zara explained. The green ones represent species that successfully address their environmental challenges. Before reaching a critical tipping point, the brown ones represent those that did not. Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes as she looked at the dead, worlds floating above her. What made the difference? What did the successful ones do that the others didn't? They learned to see their planet as a single, interconnected system rather than a collection of separate territories, Zara said. They stopped competing with each other for resources and started working together to preserve them. Most importantly, they learned to listen to their scientists before it was too late. But that's exactly what we're struggling with, Lisa said, frustration creeping into her mental voice. The people who have the power to make changes often ignore the research. They prioritize short-term profits over long-term survival. We have observed this pattern, Zara acknowledged. It is one of the most challenging aspects of your species' situation. If your scientists understand the problems and even have many of the solutions, but your political and economic systems make it difficult to implement them quickly enough. Lisa found herself sharing her own research with Zara, describing the coral bleaching event she had witnessed, the species migration she had tracked, and the chemical changes she had measured in seawater samples, were through their mental connection. She could feel Zara's deep understanding and appreciation for the work that Lisa and her colleagues were doing. Your research is more important than you realize, Zara told her. The data you collect helps us understand how quickly changes are occurring and where they are having the greatest impact. Scientists like you are among the most valuable members of your species. Sometimes it feels hopeless, Lisa admitted. Like we're trying to stop an avalanche with our bare hands. I understand that feeling, Zara replied. But you must remember that every piece of information you gather, every person you educate, every small change you inspire, all of these things matter. Even if you cannot see the full impact of your work, it is contributing to a larger understanding that may ultimately save your world. The storm outside seemed to be weakening, though it was still too dangerous to venture out. Lisa realized that this extraordinary night was giving her something she had never expected. Seeing Earth through alien eyes, understanding how her work fit into a much larger picture, was changing how she thought about everything. When you leave, Lisa asked quietly, will we ever see each other again? That depends on many factors, Zara replied. My people do not normally maintain contact with individual members of other species. But your situation is unique, and your work is directly relevant to our ongoing observations. Lisa sensed that there was more to what Zara was saying, but she didn't push for details. For now, It was enough to know that this incredible encounter might not be the end of something, but rather the beginning. As the first hints of dawn began to filter through the cave entrance, Lisa could hear that the storm was finally losing its strength. The howling wind had died down to a gentle breeze, and the constant drumming of rain on the rocks had faded to an occasional drip. She felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that she would soon be able to return safely to her car, but sadness that this incredible encounter was coming to an end. The weather has stabilized, Zara confirmed through their mental connection. It will be safe for you to travel back to your vehicle soon. Lisa sat up on the biothermal platform, feeling more rested and energized than she had in months. The experience of sharing Zara's natural warmth had done more than just save her from hypothermia. It had somehow refreshed her entire system in a way she couldn't fully explain. Her muscles felt relaxed, her mind was clear, and even the chronic tiredness that came from long hours in the laboratory seemed to have disappeared. "I feel amazing," Lisa said, stretching her arms above her head. "Is that normal?" The biothermal process also helps repair cellular damage and optimize biological functions, Zara explained. "Your body has been under stress from both the cold, exposure, and the general pressures of your daily life." The thermal sharing helped address both issues. Lisa's clothes had dried completely during the night, warmed by the ambient heat from the chamber walls. As she got dressed, she found herself dreading the moment when she would have to say goodbye to Zara and return to her normal life. How could she go back to her regular routine after experiencing something so extraordinary? "I don't want this to end," Lisa admitted as she pulled on her running shoes. "Going back to my normal life feels impossible now. How can I pretend that none of this happened?" "You should not pretend," Zara replied, standing gracefully and moving toward what appeared to be a small alcove in the chamber wall. "What you have experienced tonight should change how you approach your work and your life. That is the point." Zara reached into the alcove and withdrew something that looked like a small, smooth stone. But as she held it in her palm, it began to glow with the same blue-green light that emanated from her skin. The object was about the size of a large coin, perfectly round, and warm to the touch when Zara placed it in Lisa's hand. "What is this?" Lisa asked, staring at the fascinating device. "It is a communication node," Zara explained. "My people use them to stay in contact across vast distances. This one has been programmed to connect specifically with me and with our research team's database." Lisa's eyes widened as she realized what Zara was offering her. "You mean I can contact you, even after you leave Earth?" "Not exactly," Zara said carefully. "Direct communication across interstellar distances requires enormous amounts of energy and can only be used for emergencies. But this device will allow you to access some of our environmental data about your planet, information that might be useful in your research." The implications were staggering. Lisa was holding access to scientific data collected by an advanced alien civilization. Information that could revolutionize her understanding of Earth's climate systems and potentially help develop better solutions to environmental problems. "But there are conditions," Zara continued, her mental voice becoming more serious. "You must never reveal the source of this information to anyone. If other humans discovered that you were in contact with my people, it could create complications that we are not prepared to handle." "I understand," Lisa said quickly. "I'll be careful. I'll make sure any discoveries I make look like they came from my own research." "The device will activate automatically when you are alone and in a location where you will not be observed," Zara explained. "It will project data displays similar to what you saw tonight, but only information that will help with your environmental research. Use it wisely." Lisa slipped the device into her pocket, feeling its gentle warmth against her leg. She knew that her life had just changed in ways she was only beginning to understand. "Why are you giving this to me?" Lisa asked. "You said your people don't normally maintain contact with individual humans?" "Because your work matters," Zara replied simply. "And because I believe you will use this information to help your species, not to gain personal advantage. The data we can share with you might help accelerate the solutions your planet needs." As they walked together toward the cave entrance, Lisa felt a deep sense of gratitude mixed with an overwhelming responsibility. She had been chosen for something important, something that could potentially help save her world. The morning sunlight streaming through the cave entrance looked different to Lisa now. Everything looked different. The forest, the sky, even the air itself seemed to shimmer with possibilities she had never noticed before. "Will I ever see you again?" Lisa asked as they reached the entrance. "Perhaps," Zara replied. "My people will continue monitoring your planet's progress, if significant changes occur, or if your species reaches critical decision points, some of us may return. And if we succeed, if we manage to fix the damage we've done, then you will have earned a place among the civilizations that we openly communicate with," Zara said. "Your species has tremendous potential. You just need to learn to work together." Before it's too late, Lisa stepped out of the cave into the fresh morning air, taking deep breaths of the clean, rain-washed atmosphere. When she turned back to say goodbye, Zara was already gone. The cave entrance looked exactly like any other rocky overhang, with no sign of the incredible chamber hidden within. Walking back toward the trail, Lisa pulled out her phone to check the time. According to the display, she had been missing for less than 12 hours, but she felt like she had lived through years of experiences. Her perspective on everything, her work, her purpose, her place in the universe had been fundamentally altered. As she jogged slowly back toward her car, Lisa began to think about how she would use the gift Zara had given her, which she would need to be careful, methodical, and patient. But for the first time in her career, she felt like she had the tools to make a real difference. Years later, as Dr. Lisa Chen became one of the world's leading experts on climate recovery strategies, she would sometimes look up at the night sky and remember that incredible storm that had changed everything. Her groundbreaking research on ocean restoration and atmospheric healing would help turn the tide in humanity's fight against climate change. And sometimes, just sometimes, she would catch a glimpse of that familiar blue-green glow among the stars, reminding her that she was not alone in caring about the future of Earth.